In this episode of the Leadersmith podcast, we're going to be talking about leading successful change efforts. It's a lot harder than you think, and most people do it wrong. But if you listen to this episode, hopefully you'll do it right. Stay tuned.
In a world of incompetent bosses, micromanagers, and petty tyrants, you are listening to The Leadersmith. Now, here is your host, Darren Gertis.
Okay, so every semester, practically, I talk about what I'm about to talk about now. In my Busy 610 class, I have a chapter on creativity and change, and that's where I'm talking about now. I also talk about this at length in my leading organizational change class. It's an entire class devoted to what I'm about to talk about here. So here is, I'm talking from Leading Change by John Kotter, great book. John Kotter is one of the leading experts on change in the field. He's a Harvard University professor. He has talked and written multiple books on leading change. There are many models for change, or leading change, how to get change. Most of them are terribly academic, and while academics like to do things thoroughly, they're not always very clear. And this model that I'm going to give you is extremely clear. Okay, it's called the 8-stage change process. It's from the book Leading Change. And essentially, if you just go through the steps, you will get where you're trying to go. Now, it's really important that you follow the steps properly. The tendency is to want to just, okay, so here's what usually happens. Managers get together and they start thinking, hey, we have this thing that we want to change. And they get together by themselves because they're the smart people to go in a back room, they figure out their plan, and then they bring it out to you and they say, hey, here's our plan. And so they start the change process by instead of getting people together and finding out is this important? Do you have a sense of urgency? Is this something that needs to change? No, they think it's a statement of fact that this needs to change, and then they go and give you a plan. They start with stage 4, which is communicating the change vision, and then you're sitting there thinking, that's stupid. That's not going to work. I mean, do you even know what you're talking about? And it falls apart. So you can't start at step 4 and then hope to, there's 8 steps in the process, and you can't start at step 4 if you want to actually be successful. Okay, so the first step in the change process is establishing a sense of urgency. Now, if you establish a sense of urgency, a lot of other things fall into place. Okay, so sometimes we just don't even care. We're not interested in what it is that you want to do. But if we're urgent about it, it doesn't take a lot of effort for you to get your plan to take, because we actually want to have it done. Part of the problem is that what managers desire and what employees desire are at odds. So if you can get people to, and now how do you get to a sense of urgency? Well, one of the ways that you get there is you ask your people to go research this thing that needs to be done, how to do it. Now that does a couple things. One, if they go, yeah, we really need to do that, you're golden. 2, if they participate in the process, that is going to help them kind of move with you as opposed to resist you. Because if I'm not participating with you, then I have no stake in it. I have no, you're just imposing something upon me. And I like the way that I'm doing. That's why the way that I'm doing things now, I prefer this way, or I would have changed it if I had the power to change it. So when you come along and you change it, you're changing my preferred way of doing things. So establishing a sense of urgency. And again, do it Socratically. The Socratic method, I can go to class and I can say, hey, I've studied this leadership stuff for 20 some odd years. So here's what I know, and do this, that, and the other thing, and that'll help you. Now, it's not that simple, but let's say, okay? And they'll walk away, write everything down, maybe even test on it, but it won't have any impact on their life. Now, if in contrast, they are studying and I'm asking, well, what would happen if you did this? What would happen if you did that? And they come to their own answers. it will have so much more staying power, even if their own answers are what I would have just told them. So the idea of them coming to the answers helps them establish the sense of urgency. And once you have a sense of urgency, you have power. Okay, so establishing a sense of urgency is by far the most important step in this process, and it's almost always stepped over when a change effort falls apart. I can almost guarantee that there was no sense of urgency in the beginning. Okay, the second step, once you have this sense of urgency, is creating the guiding coalition. Now, that doesn't mean that you have a majority. That just means that you have enough, maybe double digits within the organization. Maybe, it could be 15%. But once you have a guiding coalition, enough people on board that will move along with it, you have something. Without that, if it's just one lone voice trying to carry everything, even if that lone voice is the boss, it generally isn't going to work very well. So you need a guiding coalition to help move that process along. Okay, very important, often overlooked, establishing a sense of urgency and then creating a guiding coalition before you get to step 3. Step 3 or 4 is where things usually start. Sometimes they'll start in 3 with developing a vision and a strategy. That's step 3, developing a vision and a strategy. And so the managers, they think, oh, there's a problem. Let's go in a back room somewhere and let's figure out what it is. And they develop on paper some glorious vision and strategy, but nobody else is involved in the process. And so they not only are not involved, and there's no people involved to kind of carry that vision, but there's no urgency at all. So if you start at step 3, you can see how the process is going to implode. Remember, urgency. Hey, we really need to change this. And here are a number of people who step up and volunteer and say, I want to be, oh, by the way, ask for volunteers. I've never seen it be a bad thing to ask for volunteers, because when you ask for volunteers, you're kind of smoking out the people that are involved. When my dean will ask who wants to be on this committee, unless I have a reason not to, my hand usually goes up, and there's a reason for that. I want to be involved in helping the College of Business become better, especially when it comes to hiring practices, because who you hire is going to say more about what's going to happen with the organization than not. And so who wants to be on this faculty hiring committee? My hand is up, right? So a sense of urgency, creating the guiding coalition, and then developing a vision and strategy. And now when you develop that vision, it's not just a couple of managers in the back room, but it's a broader group that's developing that vision. And so you can already see that this is going to have greater staying power, because when a broader group is putting it together. Now, here's why people don't do this. They don't have a broader group because they're not going to get it exactly their way. They're scared that something's going to be changed, or they're going to lose control in the process. I have always found that when I have a broader group of people involved, I get a better end product, and it's going to shape and shift away from what I originally intended, but it's going to be better. I think of it like Madison and the Constitution. Madison came to the Constitutional Convention in 1787 with a plan in hand, but the plan that they walked out of and signed was far better because it had a lot of people chiming in and giving suggestions. Like, it had 2 houses with equal representation, but this became the 2 houses. One was the Senate and one was the House of Representatives. One was equal representation, one was 2 per state, and that strengthened the system, right? Same way, when you involve a bunch of people in a bunch of willing people with a sense of urgency as the guiding coalition to help develop the vision and strategy, not that it's just your vision and strategy, but they're helping develop it, you get a better product. Okay, so you can see how these things are lining up like dominoes, where it's going to have a very different effect. Now you get to step 4. That's communicating the change vision. And again, that's where people start with some half-baked vision of this, we're going to do this thing, that people go, oh no. Okay, you want them to look at the vision and go, oh yes, not oh no, right? Because if they're looking at it, so let's do it right first. We'll do it right, and then we'll do it wrong. We establish a sense of urgency, we create the guiding coalition, and so people are excited, motivated, those people are on board, those people are helping create the strategy, create the vision, helping us move toward where we want to go, and then we communicate that to the rest. Now you have a good, let's say, 15, 20% of the population that has really worked this over. So it's probably a better plan. They're excited about it. It's not just you talking about it. It's a lot of people that are now involved in this, trying to move this ball down the field. And it just works better, right? Because you're communicating the vision, and a good, let's say 20% now are sold, and it's going to get bigger and bigger over time. And as you communicate, you might need to change things a little bit, but you're going to work that into the plan, and it's going to take on like kind of a snowball's momentum. Now, it works the other way too. If you start just by communicating the vision, no sense of urgency, there's nobody else pushing it, no guiding coalition. When you develop the vision, it's your vision. Now, somehow we like what we do more than we should. Like, if it was your plan, you think more highly of it than you ought to think of it. And that's unfortunate. That's a quirk of human nature. But nobody else thinks very highly of it either. So no urgency, no coalition. Your plan that people don't like, you bring it out, and now it's a train wreck because it hasn't been modified so that it actually works. And so now when you communicate it, they're sitting there and they might be nodding their head yes, but in their minds they're thinking, oh no, this isn't going to work. And here I can leave you all the reasons why it's not going to work, and it's going to be a train wreck. You don't want to be in that place. Now, let's say you did it right. If you've done it right and gone through steps 1 through 4, when you get to number 5, it should be fairly easy. Empowering broad-based action. Well, you've worked out most of the kinks, and if you have to work out more kinks, you can work out more kinks now. But empowering broad-based action means that it's not you are not a bottleneck. You're allowing other people to, or your plan is created in such a way that it's allowing them to do it. I've seen this again and again. My students will tell me about how at their work environment, somebody at corporate headquarters decided they're going to save money by having this new IT system or whatever, accounting system or whatever it is, that's just a train wreck, and they know it's a train wreck. Everybody knows it's a train wreck. It's been communicated, and now instead of empowering broad-based action, they're getting crazy, massive resistance because this isn't going to work, and they can tell you all the reasons why it's not going to work, but nobody's willing to listen. So if you do it right, you've gotten to a place where you have some buy-in, and once they have buy-in, they're going and they're making this work because the broad-based action, they are taking this on. It's not about you anymore. They're running with it because they see it as a good thing. Then number 6. So we went through establishing urgency, creating a guiding coalition, developing a vision and strategy, communicating the change vision, empowering broad-based action, and now 6. This is very important. You have to generate short-term wins. You have to show that there's going to be a tangible effect, not just the end goal, but that you're actually moving toward the right thing, and some good things are happening with this, and you're getting some momentum and some energy, and it's getting easier over here, and it's not quite there yet, but you can see how when that department it worked over there, it's going to work out for you. And if we just stick with it, those short-term wins give you new life that will help you get where you're trying to get to. Okay, so that's generating short-term wins. Number 7 is then consolidating gains and producing more change. You're going to get a virtuous cycle going. Just like if you do it wrong, you're going to get a vicious cycle, right? If you do it wrong, you're not going to get any short-term wins at all. And then it's going to become more lifeless, and it's going to be so much harder to try to push to get anything done. If you've done it right, though, and you've established urgency, created the guiding coalition, developed the vision and strategy with them, communicated it with them, empowered them, and generated short-term wins, they're getting the wins. Consolidating gains and producing more change is just anchoring, getting the culture to accept it and keep that spinning wheel of virtuous stuff going. And that's what consolidating gains and producing more wins is. And then finally, you're going to anchor these new approaches into the culture so you don't go back to the old ways. And this is how we are doing this now. That is the final step in this. Okay, so that's the 8-stage cycle according to Kotter. Now, what's most important? And sometimes we think developing the vision, number 3, is going to be most important because if we just get that right, everything else will work. It's la-la land. Remember, human beings are not rational. Okay, so just having the best plan doesn't win. It's the best plan. The plan that wins is not the best. It's the plan that has the most support that's going to win. So if you have established a real sense of urgency and a guiding coalition has come around and they create a plan. Now that plan, let's say this plan is inferior to your plan. let's say it's truly inferior, they're still going to be more likely to make it happen and actually get through stage 8 of creating the short-term wins, consolidating gains, and anchoring in a new culture than if they had your perfect plan and then it all falls apart. Because what's going to happen if we don't do it in this sequence is it all falls apart and you're going, well, these people, if they would just, I wish they would just do their work, and these lazy people, if I had better people that no, it's not better people, it's your poor leadership. So please understand, if you start with that sense of urgency, you get to anchoring in the new approaches in the culture eventually. So that's what you need to understand about the 8-stage process of leading change. Okay, so what was most important is number 1, establishing a sense of urgency. Kotter is so sure of this that he says this, quote, by far the biggest mistake people make when trying to change organizations is to plunge ahead without establishing a high enough sense of urgency in fellow managers and employees. Wow. I mean, that's a powerful quotation for contemplation, because if you just get urgency right, everything else starts to fall into place. Now, you have to do those other things in the right sequence, but if you get urgency right, everything else works. If you don't get urgency, nothing else works. All right, so thank you for your time. Thank you for listening about the leading change process, and I hope that helps you become the kind of leader that you would want to follow.